Okay, so right there we have it then. Okay, so our profit after tax be divided by the number of shares for Femila. So based on our explanation before, out of the 250 million profit after tax, 30 million is for Femila. So clearly 30 million would be for Femila, and our profit after tax is 30 million. What of the number of shares? How many shares will be issued for in Femila? Let's go back to the question and try to sort out or identify how many shares would be on issue in Femila. Okay, so the question tells us somewhere here, right here, so we don't read too far. It says Alice is now considering a demerger and a stock market listing for the subsidiary. The financial advisors of Alice have suggested that Femila should be floated with a share capital of 40 million shares of 50 naira, 50 kobo each. The number of shares for us therefore be 40 million. That's what we're looking at for the new company Femila. So 40 million. So what do we have? 30 divided by 30 million. 30 million divided by 40, 0.75. So our value per share would be our earning per share, which is 0.75 that we just calculated, multiplied by the P ratio at the lower end of 12. So what do we have? 0.75 multiplied by 12. That gives us 9 naira per share. Okay, so based on the lower end, does it make sense for the 5,000 shareholders? Let's calculate, see if it makes sense for the 5,000 shareholders based on the lower end. And then we'll also see whether it makes sense for the 5,000 shareholders based on the higher end of the PE ratio. So let's begin with the lower end of the PE ratio. The value before the demerger for the 5,000 shareholders is 48,750. So this is based on the lower end. Based on the lower end PE ratio. Okay, so the value before that we calculated, before anything happened, the value before for the 5,000 shareholders was 48,750. So 9.75 per share multiplied by the 5,000 shares. So 48,750. What of the value after? Let's calculate what the value after would be. Okay, so the value after now. Now the value after is twofold. One is, what is the value of those shares in with Alice, and what is the value that those 5,000 shareholders will gain from Femila? So they are twofold: the value from their existence as shareholders of Alice, and the value from their existence as new shareholders in Femila. So let's begin with the value from their existence as shareholders in Alice. After the merger, the value of the company per share in Alice will drop from 9.75 to 7.70 per share, and then it's a 5,000 shareholders. So that would be 5,000 multiplied by 7.70. What do we have there? 5,000 multiplied by 7.70. Total is 38,500. Now, these new shareholders, these 5,000 shareholders will also be issued shares in Femila. They have 5,000 shares in Alice. They will be issued shares in Femila. How many shares would they be issued in Femila? Would they be issued the same 5,000? How many shares? Let's go back to our question and see how many shares will be issued in Femila. Okay, so it says here that the shareholders of Alice should receive 1 share in Femila for every 5 shares held. So for every 5 shares held in Alice, they'll get 1 shares in Femila. So for these 5,000 shareholders, how many shares will they have? 1 for every 5, and they have 5,000. So that would be for Femila, they're going to be given 1 for every 5, and they have 5,000 shares. And that is about 1,000. What is the value of Femila? The value of Femila at 12 Naira P ratio, the value is 9 Naira per share. So that is that multiplied by 9. So that is 1,000 multiplied by 9, which is 9,000. Okay, so let's compare the value after now against the value before. So that's 38,500, 38,500 plus 9,000. So that is 47,500. So quick question, guys. The value before and the value after, does it make sense to these 5,000 shareholders at the lower NPE ratio of 12? Does it make sense to them to undertake this demerger? What do you think? The answer clearly is no, because the value after is lower than the value before. What's the difference? 1,250. We can just have a comment somewhere here. The value of the 5,000 shareholders. Value of the 5,000 shareholders at the lower end of the PE ratio. Decreases by 1 to 50. Guys, any question? Any question? Okay, so let's do the upper end then. We'll do the upper end then quickly. Basically the same step we're going to do, check, take for the upper end. The only difference is that for the upper end, we're looking at where PE is equals to 14. So we're just going to redo our solution from this point, but this time it is when it is PE ratio is equals to 14, which is the upper level based on the question. So the upper level would be a PE ratio of 14 times. So let's do that quickly. That's going to be pretty fast. Everything is going to be the same. We're just changing, wherever we have 12, we're changing it to 14. Everything will be the same. So that's the second one. If Femila PE is equals to 14. Okay. So everything will just be the same. P ratio valuation, or P ratio valuation, is equals to the earning per share multiplied by the PE ratio. We have our earning per share. We've calculated it before. So there's no need to recalculate it again. We calculated our earning per share before as 0.75. There's no need to recalculate that again. Our new P ratio that we're using this time is the upper end, which is 14. Okay, so what do we have? That is 0.75 multiplied by 14 gives us 10.5. 10.5 per share. Okay. So let's quickly determine whether it's worth it or not based on the higher NP ratio. So based on the higher NP ratio. Okay, so we're calculating the value before and the value after. The value before does not change. Okay, so I need to mute someone quickly. So the value before does not change. We've calculated it. We know what it is. So we just drop that down. The value before any actual demerger is 48,750. So we just drop that down, 48,750. 48,750. The value after for Alice, it still remains, it doesn't change. It reduces to 7.70, so that gives 38,500. That doesn't change. 38,500. For Femila, at the higher end, it changes. So that would be how many shares is it getting? It's getting 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5 multiplied by 5,000. We then multiply by the value at the upper end, which is 10.5. The only difference here is that in this one, we multiply it with the value at the lower end. This one we multiply with the value at the upper end. Okay, so that gives us a total of 10,500. Okay, so the total of the value after $49. Sorry, is it 4? Yeah, 49,000. So in this case, the value after is higher than the value before. So that's what was the difference. 49,000 minus 48,750. 48,750. Okay, so it's a very small difference of 250. Okay, so let's quickly do a quick recommendation on it. So the second one makes sense, but the difference is not much anyway. The second one makes sense to the shareholder because the value after is higher than the value before. For the first one, the value after is lower than the value before. So we can just put in a few lines. We can say that the demerger could be beneficial or not, depending on the PE ratio used for Femila. Yeah, so depending on what we use for Femila. At the higher end, which is the 14%, there is an increase in value of 250. And at the lower end, there is a decrease in value. Of how much? 1,250. Yeah, so there you have it, guys. Any question? Or maybe just any question generally on mergers and acquisition, if you have any. If this one was smooth sailing, if you have any question generally on mergers and acquisition, you could just ask, because I want to leave practice of mergers and acquisition for now, given we've attempted 2 questions, and begin to look at other top tested areas as well. Any question? Okay, so a recap for me would be that, guys, just try and practice the 2 questions we've done in this practice. The first one would teach you how to value different valuation method. That's what the first one will teach you. The second one will now teach you how to determine whether or not a merger, a demerger, a divestment, a capital restructuring, whether or not it is beneficial. And it is a very straightforward approach. Just find what the value is before, compared to what the value is after. The difference will tell you whether or not it is beneficial to undertake it. The only other thing you just need to know would be what those different mergers and the merger term would mean. For example, what a divestment means and what a demerger means. So if it's a divestment, your shareholders will not have interest in the new company. So that second part where we're calculating what's the value of in Femila will not come, because Femila, the shareholders will not have interest in the new company. You're selling off your company, you're selling it off if it's a divestment. But if it's a demerger, you're just forming a new company and you're going to give your shareholders shares or in that new company. And so we need to bring that, we need to factor that into our computation. Any question, guys? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll just stop this